Welcome to Museum of the African Diaspora Online. My name is Elizabeth Gessel, and I'm the Director of Public Programs here at Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the challenging circumstances we are all in, and I hope everyone in the audience today is safe and healthy. MoAD stands in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. We mourn the senseless murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, Rayshard Brooks, and so many others who have lost their lives at the hand of police brutality and racial injustice, including those whose names we do not know. We also want to start with a land acknowledgement. As many of us are settler, immigrants, or descendants of those forcefully brought to the continent, our institutions were founded upon exclusions and erasures of the indigenous peoples whose land we are located. With deep respect, MoAD acknowledges that even in virtual space, our people, our work, and our network servers are on native lands, and we thank the indigenous peoples of the Bay Area who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Today, we are thrilled to be presenting author Melissa Valentine in conversation with artist Sadie Barnette. And they will be speaking about Melissa's breathtaking memoir, The Names of All the Flowers. And we can thank Sadie for the beautiful cover art of the book. And a special treat today is that Melissa and Sadie are childhood friends from Oakland. So that will make this conversation especially just a treat for all of us. The program will begin with Melissa and Sadie, but there will be time for questions from the audience at the end. So please use the Q&A box if you have questions for them. And we would also love to hear where you are joining us from. So please take a moment to type into the chat where you're located. I will introduce our guest today. Melissa Valentine is a writer from Oakland whose work explores race, grief, and healing from trauma. Her nonfiction has appeared in Guernica, Jezebel, and Apogee, among others. She holds an MFA in creative writing from Mills College and a BA from Sarah Lawrence College. She lives in Brooklyn. Sadie Barnette's photography, drawing, objects, and installations embody collective and familial histories. Grounded in acts of celebration and resistance, her work is also tethered to the otherworldly, offering glittering speculative spaces. Unconfined to a particular medium, her modular practice holds the poetics and politics of city space, adornment, and the living room. Recent projects include the reclamation of a 500-page FBI surveillance file amassed on her father during his time with the Black Panther Party and her interactive reimagining of his bar, San Francisco's first Black-owned gay bar. So please join me in welcoming Melissa Valentine and Sadie Barnette.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that wonderful welcome and opening the space for us. I also have a couple thank yous. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know that, we're all figuring out how to use this digital time and space and also take care of ourselves and each other. And I really hope that this space can also offer care and healing. We're going to be talking about real things, difficult things. We're going to be talking about loss and trauma, but we're also going to be talking about creativity and empowering our stories and collaboration. And I really want to thank MoAD for hosting this program that is, about art and authorship and also about friendship and sisterhood. And I'm really, really, really so happy and proud to share this space with Melissa. I also do want to, as always, thank those that came before us on this land, the artists and writers that have come before us, ancestors that have come before us, those that we know by name and those that we don't, as well as our families. I know that a lot of folks who are probably tuning in right now are, dear friends and family who have supported both of our work for a long time and are really, have a stake in this moment, in this amazing moment of celebration for Melissa's first book, which it's hard for me not to just go off on a huge gush about all the things that I think about this book, but I think the most appropriate thing to really open up this space before we delve, deeply into the text would be to invite Melissa to share with a reading with us. We're so lucky to actually be able to hear you tell your story. So if you wouldn't mind gracing us with a reading, I know everyone would love to hear.
Absolutely. And I just want to say a quick thank you. Thank you so much, Sadie. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, MoAD. Thank you, everyone who's listening, making this a part of your evening tonight. So grateful to be sharing space with Sadie and all of you. And like Elizabeth said, we've known each other for a really long time, so this is very special to me. And yes, I would love to share a passage from the book. I want to give a little bit of context. The part I'm going to read is a little bit later in the book. And the narrator, me, is about 16, and I'm sitting with my brother, Junior. He and I are sort of the stars of this book. I'm sitting on his bed, and he's just informed me that he sells crack. And I, being his little sister, worried about his safety, I'm terrified by that. And kind of at this moment in the family, everyone's terrified about what might happen to him and what we think might happen to him, what can happen to him. So I'll just jump in. Walking through the threshold to my family home gets harder and harder. The outside and the inside of my life grow more and more distant from one another. I have begun to stand taller. I have begun to wear my fear as apathy. Junior is home less and less, and I am lonelier than I know how to recognize. Dad has punished me for staying out late by tossing the contents of my drawers onto the neighbor's roof. Thank God the gun wasn't there when he did it. Across the window are all my clothes mixed with overgrown ivy, thrown up there just like trash. When I enter the house, I am thankful to hear Sibo playing from Junior's room. I'm surprised he's home, and I go straight to his room and knock. I wonder what new arrangement he has with Mom and Dad. Miraculously, Mom is sleeping over the bass pounding right next to her bedroom. He turns the music down. What? It's me. I hear some things shuffling around, and he finally opens the door for me. Dad has taken the lock off his door, so he can't hide whatever it is he's doing when he's in there. But he's figured out a way to keep the door closed. I can see his finger fiddling with a metal clasp when the door opens. He seems to be in good spirits. I take a seat on his bed, and he closes the door behind me, turns the music back on. Mom's sleeping, turn it down, I say. Gosh. He turns it down a bit. I don't like Sibo. He loves him. Whenever he's home, he's on repeat. Thank God you're home, I say. Why? What's up? Junior gives me his attention, smiling. He smiles more since he's gotten gold teeth. I'm going crazy living here. I put my head in my hands and start to rub my eyes, take a deep breath and compose myself. I'm all alone here. It's just me and Angelica. You're never home. Daddy threw all my clothes on Mr. Kramer's roof. Junior starts to laugh. What the fuck? Don't laugh. I'm so fucking pissed. I can't even go up there. It makes me so mad, and I don't have anything to wear. He continues to laugh in his special gap-toothed way, wind vibrating through his teeth. He pulls his belly. Are you done? I ask. That's hella funny. I'm sorry. Stay in here and keep me company. I relax onto the bed, letting myself pop back and listen to the music. This dude is fake, I say. Junior shoots me a look. What are you talking about? He dismisses me and gets on his knees to get something from under his bed. You really think this guy has murdered all these people? That's all he talks about. It's so boring. He probably hasn't killed anyone. And what the fuck does 187 even mean? It's police code for homicide, he says. How do you know that? He shrugs, focused on his activity. He brings out one of our dinner plates, which is covered in crack. Then he pulls out sheets of plastic and puts tiny portions of crack into them, twisting them into micro baggies that look like the firecrackers kids throw into the street and pop like fireworks. Want to help me? No, I shout. I wish you wouldn't do that. What do you think is going to happen to you? Nothing's going to happen to me. What if the police catch you? They won't, first of all. They can't. All you got to do is swallow it and run. Swallow it? I ask, horrified. Junior, I admonish him. Have you smoked crack? Do you smoke crack? He starts to laugh at me. Man, he laughs. Hell no, I don't smoke crack. Well, don't swallow it, ever. He laughs again. He's almost done making the tiny bags, and now the plate is empty with just a powdering of the drug left on the plate. I look at it as if it's diseased. What are you going to do with that? I ask, backing away from it. Do something with it, I command. Get rid of it. He finds my concern amusing and laughs again. He brings the plate up to his face, sticks his tongue out, and licks the plate clean. He got what he wanted, a reaction out of me. Junior, I scream. Quiet, he shouts back and brings the plate down. Don't trip. Don't trip? You just did crack. Melissa. He looks at me sternly. I'm fine. He smiles. He is so many things. He already has so many names. Crackhead and drug addict cannot be added to the list. I worry. I have never seen him bag up crack before. I didn't know for sure he sold crack, but now I know. He showed me crack, like he showed me a gun, like he showed me cash, like he showed me weed and stolen cars and gifts and lunches and dinners and clothing and funerals. He wants me to see. I want him to be my brother. I don't want him to have the other names. I don't want him to be of the other places. I want him to be of this house, of this street, with our names outside, of this home, of this family, not the others he's found, or the ones he still looks for. I act cool. Crack, no big deal. Weed, I'll smoke it with you. I am so damn cool. Gun, I'll hold it for you. I will bear witness to who you are in your masks, so I can be there when you return. I must be willing to see it all and find to see you. What would happen to you if you didn't wear those other names? Who would you be? I sit on your bed, I open windows, doors, accept gifts, waiting for you to arrive, to return. I am complicit again. Now it is crack I'm okay with. The man you made dance, the other men. The time I paged you and you called back and I told you my bike had been stolen because you're my big brother and because I knew you'd know what to do. You found it instantly, and I thought you were magic. But it was because you knew the crack addict who likely stole it. You knew where they waited to buy more crack. You saw the things they had. My bike, other people's bikes, dots, connect. And the street, once again, that abstract and terrible place, becomes just that much more filled in. And then I see your smile, the crack plate before us. I want so much for us to be brother and sister. Not a thug and his sister, a drug dealer and his sister, a monster and his sister. So I sit with you on this bed and I say nothing, and I believe you when you say they can't catch me, they won't catch me, I'll be fine. Debo echoes around us, the violent and doom-filled lyrics, 187s and us on a bed, a nice bed, in a house, a big house, on a street, a nice street, so far from that street. It makes no sense. The words envelop us as we are, boy and girl, sister and brother, son and daughter. In that space without labels, when I can't hear the soundtrack, when I shut out the crack, the guns, the murders, the failing, the chaos, we just are. We are not good or bad. No walls nor shields have been built around us, and we have no names because here we are far too brilliant, far too bright for labels. In this space, we are transcendent. Here, we bear the names of all the flowers. In this space, we are free to bloom, to be big, fragrant, joyful, radiant. It is in this place where I wait for you. You are not a thug or a delinquent or a monster, and I am not stupid, a whore or a fuck up. This is the place I like to see us, the space I want to make for us. What are you about to do? I ask. Our eyes meet for a moment. I'm about to go out, he says, almost apologetically. Gotta make this money. I don't plead this time. I don't beg. I'm so tired. The crack brings a new level of exhaustion over me and a new level of numb. It is all I can do to lift myself from this bed, to leave this room and drag myself to my own. He grabs his towel, hanging over his closet door, and heads to the door where we walk back upstairs together. Don't use all my conditioner, I say. He smiles at me. I'll get you some more, he winks. From my room, I can hear the shower running. When he's finished, I smell the flowers from his hair. He showers and dresses like a man going off to work at an office. but it is night and his office is the street. He taps my closed bedroom door as a hello or a goodbye, as he often does before he heads back downstairs to dress and go off to work. Bye, I yell from behind the door. Junior doesn't come home and doesn't come home and doesn't come home. Every time the phone rings, there's terror in our hearts. We all know what happens to Black boys on the street. We know what happens to Black boys. This knowing is felt in the way we move around the house, in the way we move, in the way we sleep, in the way we breathe, in the way we speak. It is felt when I walk through the door of this house. It is felt most when the phone rings. Mom is the only one brave enough to say it out loud. I'm just waiting for the call, she says, and she says it often now. We all know what she means. The phone rings one day and there's news. Mom grabs her heart. Junior's in jail. She exhales. He's alive. He's alive. My boy is alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. It's so generous, and it's, you know, if we were all together in real space, I would just let us sit for a minute, like in the silence, and have a moment. It's so moving, like literally it's affecting, it changes you. It changed me to read the book. I was different after I read the book. I was different for, you know, a week, and then a little bit different for another week, just looking at things a little different, feeling full and raw. And I just want to kind of invite people to sit, you know, with that for a moment, like what it feels like to be moved by something. And how often is it that an artist is generous enough and talented enough, skilled enough to move you and to affect you. And just, you know, you reading that small passage, I just want people to sit with being moved. It might be emotional and difficult, but, you know, to just sit with that openness for a minute, I think is what I want to offer to people. And, you know, obviously I've read the book, and a few folks on here have probably already gotten through it. For a lot of folks, you know, they don't know all the ins and outs. So maybe you can just do, you know, some contextualizing in your words, you know, what this book is about, and, you know, what it kind of witnesses.
Yeah, absolutely. This book is about so many things because it's about a family, you know, and families are complicated. But at the center of it is a relationship with my brother and I. And it's about our coming of age in Oakland in the 90s. And it's a tragic story. My brother was killed by gun violence when he was 19 and I was 16. And it was pretty much the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And my family, I would say, and, you know, all of us have dealt with it in our own ways. Yeah, but when you're 16, I think trauma affects you when you're young. It affects you in a way that's like it grows up with you, and that was so important for me to get in this book. So I tried to really infuse it with not only the event, but kind of what it does to you and how it changes you. You just spoke about, you know, this book changed you, and that is so beautiful because the experience changed me, and I wanted to kind of like I wanted to share that, and I wanted people to know what that felt like. It felt, holding it felt very alone, you know, it felt very lonely. And I really thought it was important to witness and have others witness what had happened to my family. So when he was murdered, I was 16 and I really became politicized at that point. I started to understand his death as something more than a personal tragedy. For me and my family, I started to understand it as part of this systemic thing that was happening in our country, in our cities. And I really started to understand it as, you know, wow, he really was that, like, his life was kind of fit perfectly in this like school to prison pipeline story. And it made me really angry. And then, you know, and then you can't unsee it. You see it everywhere, and you start to see injustice everywhere, and you start to think about all of these injustices as part of a bigger system. Yeah, and so I do thank him for politicizing me. But this book is also about a family. You know, it's about a family, our love for each other. Yeah, it goes it goes to a lot of different places, but I think those things are at the heart of it. It's told in the first person. It starts when I'm 7, so it's like a little girl is talking to you, and she grows up, and you see her grow up, and you see her brother grow up, and that was so important to me because you know, I wanted us to have humanity. That's another huge part of why I wanted to write this book. I wanted people to see my brother with humanity and his full humanness, and extend that to other men and women, and you know, see people in their fullness. So I wanted us to be children. I wanted us to be innocent. I wanted us to play, to have dreams. And that scene that I just read, you know, where we're sort of like, I'm imagining this place for us where like we don't have these labels and stereotypes, and you know, we are not defined by the places we're from. We're not defined by the color of our skin. We're just like, we're so much bigger than that. And I wanted to kind of allow that space to be, and that space is so present as children, I think. And then you start to become aware and you start to sort of lose it. But yeah, so that's why I start the book so young, and then we go up to age 16, and then, where the event is centered, and then of course the aftermath and how my family deals with it, how I sort of like carry this trauma with me, and how it really informs the way I see the world and will always see the world. So that's the kind of book, major themes.
Amazing, thank you. I know it's hard to, like, there's so much there, but that I feel was a perfect distillation and kind of intro for people, a welcome, to the book. There's so many things that you talked about that I want to talk about. I think, one thing that just stands out, family, I think that can't be understated enough. I think any person in any family could relate to your story just by like the specific dynamics of, love and what can go wrong with love and communication in a family and all of that. So I definitely want to get into that. But something that I think is also really important to the kind of, structure and artistry of the book is that young perspective, right? So you have these moments where there's like this clearly very young, youth perspective, but then there's this older Melissa, who has like the language to describe so, so clearly what's going on. And I just found myself like wishing that the little Melissa had that language, and I feel like there's a part of this that's retroactively like giving that language to the young Melissa. There's like a particular moment where your brother Junior is showing you like some stuff that he jacked, something that he stole. Like, I think it's a CD player, and he's, showing you like, look what I got. And he says, but make sure to like hide it under your bed so mommy and daddy don't find it. And he uses the words mommy and daddy, and your heart just kind of, shatters, because you're like, these are kids, these are children moving through the world, doing the things that kids do, testing the limits of who they are and what they can get away with, except for that the consequences are so extremely high because of, the society and the structure that we're in, where there's like this, school to prison pipeline, and there's just all these cracks waiting for you to fall through, especially if you're, a young Black man or a young Black woman in Oakland. And another moment that really stood out to me when thinking about this young perspective was when your aunt that's visiting takes you and Junior to like a county fair or an amusement park. And there's this moment where you're kind of like buzzing with all this pent up energy and desire and passion and want and moving through this fair. And she kind of extinguishes that a little bit. Maybe your energy is too hype, maybe it's too much, it's possibly annoying, but just with this like really swift and accidental perhaps gesture, she kind of extinguishes this light in you. And I just was so struck by how easy it is to turn that light out in such a tiny person. And again, what the consequences of that can be when the stakes are so high. I think you said something, if you don't mind, I think you said, adults are a problem, a hindrance to our freedom, the expression of our desire, and they can't protect us. And to me, that was it. It's like, you can't trust adults anymore. You're finding it for yourself. And yeah, I don't know, to me that youth voice the tension was so important. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you cultivated that, or just how you felt that, how you lived that.
Yeah, there's so much there. Thank you for bringing those passages up. Yeah, I think through writing this book, in a way, I am giving voice to my younger self. I'm giving her a voice, and I'm giving her a chance to, give language to these emotions that she felt such a long time ago. So that's really the beauty of like embodying that child's voice. I really had to like go in there. Yeah, and it's been a very healing process, I have to say. Like, what a gift it's been to go into that child's voice and basically spend a lot of time with little me and kind of offer all these insights about what was going on. But yeah, there was so much there. What you just brought up, like, the light in children and this like yearning for this desire to be big and to like have things and to have comfort. And I'm always searching for like beauty and like, I have a lot of like moments in the book where I'm sort of like walking down a beautiful street and looking inside people's houses and just like, I just want to like have that luxury and like beauty, and I want a beautiful life. And the adults around me, I'm learning, aren't necessarily going to be able to take care of me. They're not able to take care of my brother. I've seen that. And so my trust is definitely, I don't have that much trust. And so I'm looking for protection elsewhere. And it's like every adult that comes into my life, I'm like, maybe you. And for her, it was like, oh, maybe you will be the answer you'll give me joy, and maybe you'll show me the beauty, and maybe you'll give me a big life and a big experience at this county fair with cotton candy. And it's like, when she said no, it was so devastating to me. And it's like, yeah, it's like such a tiny moment in a child's life. But for me and the emotional world that I lived in, to me, that was devastating. It was just yet another example of adults just kind of, like I said, being a problem. And I'm showing too, in writing that I was sort of like, I saw my brother as my protection. He was the one I wanted to align with. It was him who sort of understood those kind of silent moments. And, in the back of the car after, when we're going home after the county fair, we have a moment, and he's like, he's kind of like, I know what just happened, and that's fucked up, and like, we sort of had those moments all throughout the book. So what I was doing, I guess, was showing that emotional world that little Melissa inhabited, and also showing the alignment with my brother. That was definitely like in writing this book, because a life is so big, right? A life is not linear. There's just so much going on. And, even me and my brother's relationship, you have to kind of hone in on that part of life, and so that's part of what I was doing too, is just sort of like making these two characters align and making them so that they're on this journey together, yeah. And then another craft thing, is like basically zooming in and zooming out. If you think of like a camera, it's like you zoom in on these dialogue moments where you're like really close up and you're sort of in the scene, and then sort of the insight and the wisdom in the older Melissa comes in when you sort of zoom out and you take it out into this bigger perspective, and that's where you sort of like put in those insights. So I definitely am a fan of the zooming in and zooming out moments.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to think of that visual. Another thing I love that you just said is, wanting to be seen. I think you said wanting to be big. And I feel like another thing that you really captured is kind of that tension between wanting to be big and wanting to be seen. And then also when you enter your teenage years, kind of wanting to hide and not be seen at all. and maybe like be so big and loud that you can hide the fact that you don't want to be seen in some type of like complicated, messy teenage journey. And again, just, you know, how high those stakes are when you're like, you know, moving in this world that we find ourselves in. I think another really central takeaway from this book, and it, you know, is kind of seen in the title as well, is just this thing of the beauty and the pain. And I think, you know, in my own work, people ask me about that kind of, you know, tension too, but I feel like it really, in your work, they're not separate at all. It's like, there's so much beauty in the world. There's so much beauty in each other. There's so much beauty in your brother, in your whole family. And it's because of that beauty that the loss is then so painful. And then, but instead of that kind of, you know, making life hopeless, it makes it even more precious. And it's kind of this like cyclical, symbiotic thing where it's more beauty and more pain and more beautiful, and that's more painful. And I think that was ultimately why the book was just so affecting, is because it just, you walk away feeling like it's so full and life is so worth fighting for. You know, I think especially in the, there's like a funeral scene where that's kind of what part of the takeaway is how worth it is to fight for these lives. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, you know, how that felt for you, how that played out for you, and also just how, you know, what it was like writing this, how you knew that it was going to be in this format, or if you knew, you know, how long it took you to arrive here.
Yeah. Well, my brother, Junior, taught me a lot. And like I say in the acknowledgements in the book, like I thank him first, because, you know, he's the reason for this book. And I think the dead teach us so much. And yeah, I mean, what you just said was like, that's life, right? Like beauty and pain, and that is living. And I think in a book, if you can sort of like capture the experience and the sort of like dichotomies of what living is, then gosh, I've done my job. And so I'm grateful that you said that. But yeah, no, I play with that a lot. And then look at the package of this book, right? Like it's so, thank you, Sadie. But that's exactly what it is. It's like, this is a beautiful like bouquet of flowers, but it's on a street where someone died, you know, and the wall is pink. And like, this is my point of view as a young woman who lost her brother, and who experienced a ton of pain, but in his death has taught me so much about like what love is and what healing is. And I think we have these experiences, these painful experiences, so that they can teach us, you know. And so that's a huge like part of why I wrote this book, you know. And it's been a gift in writing it itself. It's been such a healing process just in itself, writing it, because it took a long time, right? It took, I mean, the moment when you like think like, oh, maybe I should write something, and then, you know, years later, it's like, oh, maybe I'm onto something here, and then you start sharing it. It's such a long process, and then you have somebody who wants to publish it, and that's a whole other thing, and that even takes a couple more years. So I've been with it for such a long time, and I've had, I think, the privilege to be able to process with my grief and process with my trauma and process with my childhood and sort of like process with little me, you know, and like really get to know her. And I've been able to, you know, be an observer of my family and create characters out of them. And then, you know, my brother, I think the ultimate gift, you know, it's like I said, he's taught me how to love, how to heal. And this book will always be sort of my offering, you know, to everyone who reads it. But yeah, beauty and pain are so like, yeah, it's life, you know. And I think your work explores beauty and pain so much too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always, to me, sort of one in recognition of the other, you know? So every time there's like joy in my work or celebration, it's, you know, in response to and in acknowledgement of the pain and the struggle, and, you know, that joy being, you know, in defiance of the oppression and the weight. And it's always, you know, each one is kind of mirroring the other. And sometimes I think, you know, sometimes in my work, I think I try to put the joy there so that I can access it when I need it. I feel like in some ways, you know, in your book, you put the pain there so that you didn't have to hold it in you. And I feel like it's a similar, it's kind of the opposite, but it does a similar thing, which is to share some of, you know, what's inside and disperse it, and hopefully, you know,
It
put
is
it out there for others.
it is a resistance. It's a defiance, absolutely. And I think that's the point of this. It's like, I'm searching, like we just talked about in your last question, like this little Melissa is searching for, you know, she's trying to let herself have some desire. Like, what is that? What does that feel like to want things? Like, what does it, could I imagine having like a beautiful life? You know, like, is that possible for me? And even in the book title, it's like the names of all the flowers in the moment, you know, in the scene that I read, it's like, I want to imagine. This book is an imagining of something bigger and something more, something beyond, you know, the struggle, something beyond the pain, something beyond the labels, beyond, beyond the struggle. And it's like allowing joy and allowing beauty, despite all that's happening and despite life and like all the pain that it brings, you know. But it's absolutely a resistance. I love what you said.
Another thing that I was thinking about that kind of relates to that, where you just left off, is thinking about like art versus activism, or art and activism, and just kind of what, you know, I think of it as like a Venn diagram in a way. And so sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other, sometimes it's both. I don't think it always needs to be everything, but you know, I was thinking, it wasn't my first thought at all when I read the book, but recently I've been thinking, like, you know, every district attorney, everyone working in the criminal justice system should read this book. But I also don't, it doesn't read as if that was your intention. You know, it's not like educational or statistical. It's not trying to convince anybody, I don't feel, of anything. You know, it's not, there's no graphs, like, you know, mapping out the statistics of school to prison pipeline, but it's, but I wonder, you know, how you thought about kind of navigating what it would do in the world, or whether, you know, you had to navigate that, and now that it's completed, how you hope that it can move kind of through our political world, or perhaps, you know, at different levels at the same time, and kind of how you think of this work in that way.
Art and activism is such an interesting concept. I feel like for me, they've been so, like, I'm always kind of grappling with that. And I ask myself if this is a political book. And, you know, I think by virtue of it being about the topic that it's about, it became a political book. And then once I, you know, found my agent and she read it, and, you know, the introduction was added later, where I'm sort of like offering the like historical context and bringing it back into this like idea of school to prison pipeline. I originally, I just, you know, I wanted to tell the story of my family. I wanted it to just be a simple, I wanted it to be a story, and I wanted that to be enough, you know? And I think there's this idea that, I don't know, like when you bring your work into the world, people want it to be certain things. And, you know, I hear my friends say this, you know, people who read a lot of Black literature, it's like, does every Black book have to be about pain? Like, can we have joy? Can we write about love, you know? My story happened to be what it was, so I couldn't help that, you know. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think just thinking about how it's moving through the world, well, and also,
Right.
personally what it feels like as well, because it is such an intimate, personal
Yeah.
portrayal of, your family and real people with real emotions and, perspectives and
Right.
experiences.
So, mhm. So, I mean, I started my journey as an activist. I think you did too.
Mhm.
Both went to this program where we're sort of like basically being trained to be an activist, and I took that with me, to college, and it's always been a part of me. And when I was in college, when I started to sort of embrace the idea of being a writer and think that like maybe that was going to be the way that I was going to communicate to the world, I think just innately, like your activism communicates through you, and it becomes like the art that you make, it becomes the books that you write, it just is part of you, and I think part of, for me, like being a Black person in America is like having this knowing, and I talk about this knowing in the book too. It's like you just have this knowing and you kind of like know the truth and it's this thing that you carry with you. It's just part of who you are, and it sometimes can be a burden because many other people don't share that same truth. But I think in that way, like, being Black is political. It's like I know something you don't know about the truth of this country, and like this idea that whiteness is superior, white supremacy. Like, I know that that's not true. Many people don't know that, and so you walk around with this like gift and this like knowledge of truth, and it's gonna come out in everything you do because that's just where we live. It's how we move through the world. But my intention in writing this book came, straight from my heart. It wasn't like I want to necessarily, affect policy, or I want like DAs to read it. Like, I want people to read it, and I want them to have a human experience when they read it, and I want them to feel compassion for young men like my brother. I want them to like, for example, if a white person reads it, I want you to look at every Black man you see and feel total compassion and humanity for that human. I want you to forget all the labels that you automatically assign to people, and I want you to just see them in their full humanness. And then the book is for everybody, though. Honestly, I don't have like a political agenda. I just simply have a human agenda, right? It's like I want this book to be just about sharing that humanity and that, like I said, like offering of healing. Like, we all have something, right? Everybody's got something, whether it's like, you have somebody that died in your family like me, and it sort of like haunts you for the rest of your life, or everybody's got a thing, and everybody's family is complicated. And if you can take anything from this work and sort of like bring it into your life and see that thing with like more compassion and more love, like despite it being complicated and hard, that's the intention too.
I love that. I want all of that too. I mean, yes, I think that's, I think similarly in my work, it's like it starts with my family and it starts for my family. I always think of, my family as my audience. And then everybody else is invited and welcomed to witness that and, kind of tap into that and hopefully draw energy, strength, something from seeing that conversation that I'm having with my family and for my family. But then I hope that it reverberates out into other spaces, into like these public social spaces, and that it can even, kind of speak to and reflect back the activist work and on the ground organizing that is like very much fighting for that same world that we're both, dreaming about, that I'm visualizing with glitter, and that you're writing about, with the flowers in this field. And, recognizing that I think similarly, we both kind of started out as these, young like activists in the Oakland public schools and just, learning about the world in that way, but then finding like my skill set is an artist, and that's me really like living my truth in my lane, whether it's, writing or taking pictures. I often think of my relation to the movement in a way that James Baldwin described as being a witness, and not necessarily, being at the meetings and the fundraisers and making these like political decisions and allyships, in the moment, but really witnessing. And I think that's so important.
Love what you said about your family being your audience first. I love that, and I feel that so much. That my book is totally like, where first it's about my family, and then it's for everyone else to share in. But I'm so curious, has that always been the case for you in thinking about your artwork? Because you're so established now. You're a rock star in my eyes. But was that always the case? Did you always think of your family as your audience?
I think that I did. I don't think that I necessarily had the language, I think, to describe it that way. I think there's so much, of this art making process for me that was just like constantly learning and growing and experimenting, and then seeing something and realizing what I meant and honing that in. And I think it's a slow process in a way, because you have to kind of make something and see it through its full stage of like idea to exhibition, and then retrospectively, learning from it to really continue this conversation. And I think of my practice as very iterative and modular. It's always changing and growing on, the foundation that it's kind of building its own language. But I think with something like the Dear 1968 project that's about this FBI surveillance of my family, I think that really gave me license to talk so specifically about my family, while also talking really expansively about, state surveillance and repression of Black activism, then and now. And so I think, as well as with the project about my father's bar, the Eagle Creek, really realizing that kind of the more specific I was and the smaller I was, the bigger it actually reverberated. And I will say, about like working together and making this photograph for you, it was like the most easy, natural collaboration, period. And I think it's just because we're like sisters in some ways. And I don't mean that in like that we talk every single day or that we've always been in the same place, in our lives, but we come from like the same place. I mean, we went to junior high together. I was there, you know what I'm saying? And it felt so natural to kind of, to make this photograph for you. I knew exactly what you meant when you said that you wanted this, street memorial, but also for it to be beautiful and for there to be like some shine. And I remember when I set up this like still life in a way, my mom was helping me do it. Of course, my mom, and she loves you. And this woman was like walking by and asked, what happened? Thinking that like, someone's been killed. And I was able to say like, well, it was a long time ago, but yes, like we are honoring a life that was lost. And now it's a book that you can read, and it's called The Names of All the Flowers. And, even the act of creating the photograph really was an act of honoring and remembering. When I was reading the book, I was in Oakland. I'm like 10 blocks away from the house where you grew up. I'm like 10 blocks in the other way, from where Junior was murdered. And it's deeply personal. And it's with so much love. And I know that, we're gonna open it up before too long, but I do want to like, really encourage people to buy the book. I was thinking about it, and I think everyone should buy 2 books. You can buy one for yourself, and maybe buy one for someone who, can't afford it, or who doesn't, buy books, but who this story might find just where they're at. And really, I can see this being one of those books where it's like the first book that shows someone that like they're reflected in literature. For me, that book, it was Toni Morrison. It was The Bluest Eye in high school when I read that book, when I was like, oh, books can be about that. Books can do that. And so I really think that, you know, this book could really be a powerful kind of moment to enter someone's life. Young people, older people, people dealing with similar issues, people dealing with totally different issues. And of course, you can buy it from MoAD and support the museum in this moment where you can't go there and support in that way. So I think, you know, people are gonna kind of start dropping their questions in soon. And I think Elizabeth will be kind enough to kind of help us navigate that chat box thing, which I still don't know really how to work out that well. But in the last, you know, few moments of our time together, if there's anything else that you know, wanted to share that I didn't, you know, get to ask you about, I'd love to hear.
Oh gosh, well, I'm just so filled with like gratitude right now. Just like being here with you, and like, yeah, you were in a way, this book, you're part of this book too. Like, you were my friend during that time, during that really difficult time. And I think there's a lot that you didn't know what was happening in my life, you know, because I was trying to survive and like, you know, hide certain things, or, you know, I was just trying to survive and trying to grow up. And that's a hard thing to do. But yeah, no, I'm feeling like such gratitude right now, and you know, for your work and for you. And I don't know if everyone here, you probably already are familiar with Sadie's work, but just check her out. She's the best. She has a book too, also for sale at the MoAD. But yeah, this artwork on the book is it's now like the most special artwork to me. You know, it's just like, you did such a great job, and like yeah, like you said, it was easy for you because you just got it, and it so speaks to the essence of the book and the heart of the book, and it has like, you know, like the feminine quality. I'm like this young woman in the story, and like you're a woman, and it just is like perfect. It's got your glitter and my flowers, if you said that before. So it's just a perfect marriage, and I think our work is so in conversation, you know, with one another, and it's just been such a lovely collaboration. And so just want to say thank you.
Back at you.
But yeah, any questions that folks have, definitely, yeah, I want to see what everyone's thinking, what struck you.
Questions. So one of the questions is, what was the reaction of your family to the book?
Well, my family it's been, everything about this book has been a process, right? When I first started writing it, I think maybe my siblings were like, I don't know why she's writing about this. Maybe even my dad once said, like, does anyone care about ordinary lives? Like, we're just ordinary people, you know? So I think there has been definitely like a gradual, just like understanding of why I think what I'm doing is important. And then there's been a gradual sharing of some of the writing. And so my siblings have read, you know, they've read like early drafts of the book as I was writing it, and we're always really supportive. And my parents were the tough ones. I didn't actually share the book with them until the very last minute. It was like in galley form, which is like the point in the publishing process where you can't really make very many changes. Like, you can kind of like change a comma or, you know, that kind of thing, but you really can't like delete anything. So I kind of did that on purpose, partly because I was afraid, you know, and I didn't share it with them earlier because, you know, I didn't want anyone to tell me no. I didn't want them to say, like, you can't write this story. I had to tell my truth. That was so important to me. So they did read it. It was really tough, I have to say. Like, they had a really hard time with it, just because it's not only my brother's story, it's like I'm inviting the whole world into my family's home and into my experience as a child, which, you know, wasn't always easy. But gosh, I have been so impressed with them and so surprised that they are now my biggest fans, and have completely forgiven me for, you know, like exposing my family, and, you know, they're now just proud of me. So I feel super lucky. I don't think all memoirs have that experience. And some memoirs are writing stories about their families who, you know, have passed. And my parents are still alive and they still live in the house that I grew up in. And lots of these things are still, you know, part of our dynamics. And so, yeah, it's been a healing journey, I think, for my family, this book existing and then being able to read it and share with me and see how the world is interacting with it and appreciating it. And they're starting to see, like, this is like bigger than our family, you know, it's something that that a lot of people can connect with, and it's important to a lot of people.
It's so brave. I mean, it's such an act of bravery for you to share the parts that aren't always easy and comfortable. And I definitely, you know, want to honor your folks and your family for also, you know, kind of stepping into that bravery and coming along, even though it might have been, you know, your idea. I'm so glad to hear that they are, you know, stepping into that and sharing, and you know, that's brave of them as well.
It is a courageous act. It's probably like, maybe you've experienced this with your work too, because you work so closely with like your father's history and your family history, you know, like taking them along with you on the journey. So now they're going along on the journey with me, and it's just the beginning. But yeah, it takes bravery on both ends, you know, on both sides. And generosity, it's like trust and generosity too.
Mm-hmm.
Another side of that is about self-care and how you took care of yourself during this whole process. One of the viewers wants to know about that and how the process, how you took care of yourself throughout the process from the first drafts of the book until even now.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I kind of grew up with this book. It's been with me. I've been writing it since I was like in my 20s, you know, and it took like 7 years in total, and you do a lot of growing in that time. And so, and then also writing about the subject of trauma, you're grappling with the ways that trauma affects your life as, you know, 20-something, which, you know, it's different for everybody. But, you know, for me, I was dealing with things and I needed to see a therapist, and I needed to do a lot of self-work. And so these things were happening at the same time. It was like me growing up and me writing this book, and both things were really feeding one another. And as a result, the book has just been so healing to me. But I get to say that in retrospect. I get to say that now that it's finished, right? Like, this has been so healing for me. And during the process, yeah, there were definitely hard moments. It was tough. You know, you have to really go back in time, and you have to, in order to embody the characters and make them alive on the page, you have to be alive with them on the page. And you have to remember a lot of hard things. And you also have to be self-aware enough to, you know, as we were talking about zooming in and zooming out, to have that insight and wisdom. It doesn't come from like, you know, like it comes from having the space to have healed, and having the space to allow, you know, that new perspective to come in. So it's been a process, hard at times. And now that it's done, you know, it's like out there living its own life. You know, it's like, you know, my child is out there like having relationships and like being in the world, and people are talking about it. And I love this part of the process because it's not mine anymore, and I get to share it. And now I get to write another book and have a different, you know, process and healing experience.
Well, people are definitely interested in what's next for you, and if you're going to grapple with fiction or a novel rather than the memoir.
I always think in nonfiction. I'm such a nonfiction person. So I really am attracted to essays, and I would love to write a book of essays. And I was talking about this with another group, just like the kind of like bravery that it takes to kind of say out loud to yourself that you want to write a book, and, you know, start a book and to finish a book. It's like I thought I was past that, but with my new project, it's like I'm having the same like I'm like, oh man, like that's scary. You want to do that? So I'm kind of like in the like thinking phases of it and the overcoming the fear part of it. Because there's something, you know, because it's me and my brain, like, of course I have to write about something really hard. So I'm sort of like finding my way into a book of essays that is going to explore, you know, another tough part of my life, a later part of my life. And so I really hope to have a draft by the end of the year.
And what about you, Sadie? What are you working on, and what's next for you?
Yeah, I have really, you know, tried to use this crazy moment as we're navigating through, you know, multiple pandemics, but first starting with the public health, you know, crisis. I really tried to use this time to slow down and to gain some perspective on my studio and my practice, and really be a bit slower and less reactive, you know, jumping on less airplanes, doing less, you know, events, has really allowed me to focus in my studio. And I think it's not surprising that that's led me back to drawing, which is really like the slowest, you know, most time, you know, needing part of my practice. And so I've been really fortunate to be able to do some big drawings during this time. And they're actually revisiting the surveillance file, the FBI surveillance file, and trying to kind of give the material weight to that project that I believe is kind of its destiny when considering how heavy and weighty the content is. So there'll be a few things coming up next year. I'm not going to announce them quite yet, but I hope that people, you know, will follow both Melissa and I on like Instagram and these ways, so that I can share some exciting things that will be coming up, things that I feel so lucky are kind of still moving forward as planned in this moment where I realize there's so much uncertainty for folks. Thanks for that question.
Can't wait to see your illustrations.
I just put your Instagram handles in the chat so everyone can check those out and follow both of you on Instagram. So Melissa, another viewer asks, when you look back now, what do you wish you had to help you with your grief and to heal your trauma more easily, if that's possible?
That's a good one. I had really great friends. So I don't actually, my support system and my friends were actually, I think what helped me get past, you know, this part of my life and to move forward and to have people in my life like, you know, like Sadie and so many of my good friends who like are doing amazing things in the world, and it's so inspiring. And so I'm just so grateful for having that support system. But I think, so I had that in my peers, and I think what I needed was an adult to be that person, you know, and like a friend, an adult who, you know, we talked about like kind of not trusting adults and not believing that they could protect you. And I think, you know, gosh, that would have been really nice to feel that. So yeah, but you can't change the past, and that's part of why my story is what it is, because I had to learn that, and I had to look for support elsewhere. And so I'm actually grateful for that.
Did the book start out as more of a journal, or did you always envision it as a book when you were writing about it?
I've always journaled, but no, the way I journal is totally different than the way I write when I'm like writing in my craft. So no, but the process to getting to this book, like everything is nonlinear, you know, like I said, I wanted to be an activist at first, and then I thought, I got, you know, you get like these moments of inspiration, and it's kind of like, maybe I should write, and maybe that's going to be the way I contribute to the world. And so it was like in my first nonfiction class back in college, you know, where like kind of the seed of this book started. And getting the feedback from a workshop for the first time in my life, and having people say like, yes, 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 do that. That's that, do that. And I had never gotten that kind of feedback, you know, in my life for anything. And it was like the first time that you sort of like, I met my talent, and I was like, oh, like I have a gift. I can tell stories. Like I can tell this story, and maybe I can tell a bigger story. And so it was that seed, you know, and then later on it was developed, and I got my MFA and sort of like tried to develop that craft a bit more. So so yeah, journaling has been separate, but it's all been a process though, and a journey in itself.
Hey, another question about one of your other siblings. It says, very little was said about your relationship with your younger sister, who was in the house with you through most of this. I wonder if that was protecting her from the exposure.
I don't think so. I don't. I mean, I didn't really try to protect anyone necessarily, because that was part of that was the hardest part about writing this book, is like, I'm revealing a lot, you know. I think Angelica, whose name is real in the book, I did change a lot of names, but I left her name. And that is because her character was quieter in the book. And that's because she was younger. It wasn't to like leave her out or protect her necessarily. It was because she was so young. And in the parts of this story that are dominant, she wasn't actually born yet. And so I do bring her in, and she is part of the story and part of our family's story. But about this particular trauma and this particular, you know, relationship with my brother and I that I really wanted to focus on, she just wasn't there as much. She was really young. She was a baby. And there was a sense of wanting to protect her as a baby, because again, like, you know, I was a child and wanting like protection, you know. I definitely wanted to protect her. And I think that comes through in the narrative without it actually, I think it comes through. And so like the silence of her character is there's nothing like, the intention is just, you know, it's just the truth of the matter is she was really young. So
Shout out to Angelica.
Angelica.
I haven't seen her in so many years, but I know she's grown up and being amazing, and you know, supporting the book, and so.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, I have been saving a question from Angelica for the very end,
Okay.
because I think it's a really nice way to close. And that question is there a message of hope that can be taken from the book ultimately?
Yes. Yes. I think that's like the whole message. It's about, like we've been talking about pain and beauty and life being all of these things. And even in death, someone teaching you something and giving you a gift and like helping you heal when they're no longer here. I mean, there's so much hope. And you know, that's like the conversation about like, is this book political? I don't know if it is. If it is to you, then great. But like my intention in writing this book was like, you know, just to share my heart, you know, and to share this idea that like beauty is possible, and joy is possible, and this idea that we're so much, we at our in our essence and at our core are so much more than we even know, and so much more certainly than, you know, many of us are, you know, stereotyped to be or labeled to be, you know, like we're so much more. So that's my hope, and that's the hope that I think is infused in this book, is just like this idea of like, yes, this imagining of a world where there's beauty for all of us.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa and Sadie, for being with us today and sharing yourselves and everything about this book. It's such a beautiful book, and I can't wait to buy more than 2 copies and give them to everyone who should read it.
Thank you.
So, yeah. I'm going to share a slide for everyone to see. Um, if you have it in you to help MoAD and to give any sort of donation to support the museum, we would love your support. Of course, first off, buy the books, both Sadie's and Melissa's books. We also would love to hear your feedback on the program today. And so we have a survey, and on the screen is a QR code. I'm also going to put it in the chat so that, or the link in the chat so that you can get the link and you can go and fill out the survey online. It'll just take about 5 minutes. And again, if you have the opportunity to support MoAD, there are easy ways to do it. You can donate online, or you can text a donation. You can text 56512 and type the word MoAD SF and then follow the link to donate. But mostly, I just want to express my gratitude to both of you and to everyone who's joined us today to talk about this book. And thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. And thank you, Melissa, for this gift. And congratulations. You did this. Yes. Thank you. Thank you
so much for being with me and for being in conversation with me. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, MoAD. Thanks everybody who's here and who came out. This actually marks kind of the finale of my little virtual tour that I've been on, so it feels like particularly special, and to be sharing the space with you, Sadie, and for us to like virtually be in San Francisco together. I just like, this is the best. So thank you so much.
All right, everyone, please enjoy your weekend, and do check out our other programs at moadsf.org, and hopefully we'll be able to welcome you into the museum soon. Thank you.